shocking. These 10 Asian countries are falling apart. Get out now. Asia is known for its ancient wisdom, rich traditions, and thriving cities. But beneath the surface, not all is well. While some countries are rising, others are quietly crumbling under the weight of debt, corruption, and unrest. People are packing up, searching for stability, and leaving behind nations that once promised prosperity. In today's episode on the Journey of Wisdom, we uncover 10 Asian countries that are falling apart in 2025. From political chaos to economic freefall, these places are warning signs of what happens when balance is lost. Could your home be one of them? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon so you never miss insights that help you live with awareness, clarity, and peace. Number 1. Yemen. Yemen stands as a stark and heartbreaking example of how prolonged conflict can reduce a nation to the edge of ruin. For nearly 10 years, war has not only destroyed infrastructure and livelihoods, but also eroded the very fabric of everyday life. Today, Yemen is facing a full-scale humanitarian catastrophe. The most urgent threat is famine. Over 17 million people are suffering from severe hunger, and without immediate global support, millions more may lose their lives to starvation. What's even more tragic is how the world seems to be looking away just when Yemen needs it most. International aid is dwindling, leaving people with no choice but to depend on the black market, which brings its own dangers. The economy has collapsed so badly that the local currency holds little to no value, and the government, if we can still call it that, can't even pay its workers. Banks have failed, and basic services have all but disappeared. Meanwhile, the conflict continues to rage on between the Saudi-backed administration and the Houthi rebels, with no real path to peace in sight. Airstrikes and drone warfare are constant, and for civilians caught in the middle, daily life is simply about survival. Number 2. Syria. Let's talk about Syria, a land once rich with history and culture, now facing one of the harshest humanitarian crises in the world. For over a decade, Syria has endured unthinkable pain. And now, in 2025, the situation is reaching an even more critical point. Although the civil war has slowed in some areas, it never truly ended. The fighting, destruction, and chaos still rage in many parts of the country. Can you imagine living where bombings and kidnappings are just part of daily life? Where you never know if the next moment will bring silence or devastation? Millions of Syrians do not need to imagine. It is their reality. The Syrian pound has collapsed, inflation is soaring, and even basic necessities like bread, cooking oil, and medicine are becoming impossible to afford. The United Nations has issued warnings. Over 70% of Syrians now rely on aid just to survive. The economy is strangled by international sanctions, and reconstruction is at a standstill. Corruption runs deep. While government elites hide behind wealth and power, ordinary people suffer in poverty and fear. So, what does it mean when a state can no longer provide for its people, protect them, or rebuild itself? Is Syria simply a failed state, or is it something even more painful? A broken home for millions who still call it their own. The presence of terrorist groups and foreign forces keeps the country on edge as power struggles overshadow peace. And as time passes, the longer the damage remains unrepaired, the harder it becomes to restore hope. Here's what we can take away from Syria's suffering. When a nation is torn apart by greed, violence, and neglect, it is the people, the mothers, the children, the elderly who pay the price. It reminds us that peace is fragile and leadership must be rooted in compassion, not control. And it challenges us to ask, in our own lives and societies, are we helping to build peace, or are we standing by as suffering grows? Number 3. Lebanon. Let's talk about Lebanon, because what's happening there right now is not just tragic, it's deeply alarming. Imagine waking up each day in a country where your life savings are locked away in banks, where the currency you once trusted has lost more than 95% of its value, and where basic necessities like food, medicine, and electricity are either unaffordable or unavailable. That's the harsh reality for millions of Lebanese people in the year 2025. The economy is in freefall and inflation is so out of control that even buying bread has become a daily struggle for many families. Can you imagine not knowing if your paycheck will still be worth anything tomorrow? Or having to depend on family members living overseas just to afford basic groceries? That's exactly what's happening in Lebanon, where remittances from abroad are now a lifeline for countless households. And it gets worse. Hospitals are barely functioning, clean water is hard to come by, and electricity is limited to just a few hours each day. How does a country move forward when its government is paralyzed by corruption and unable to act? People have taken to the streets again, demanding answers, demanding justice, and demanding a future that doesn't feel so hopeless. But the leadership remains disconnected and ineffective, leaving the nation teetering on the edge of total collapse. If no serious action is taken soon, Lebanon could face one of the worst humanitarian crises in the entire region. So here's the question. When the systems that are supposed to protect and support you start breaking down, what do you hold on to? What would you do if your country, your home, was falling apart around you? These aren't just headlines. They're real lives, real people, and a real warning of what can happen when corruption, neglect, and economic mismanagement go unchecked. If you've watched up to this point, you're clearly someone who values being informed before it's too late. Comment below with "I'm aware" to show you're staying alert and ahead of the curve. Don't click away. There's still more eye-opening information coming up that could change the way you think about travel, safety, and your future. Stick with us to the end. You won't want to miss what's next. Number 4. Bangladesh. Once hailed as a beacon of hope in South Asia, Bangladesh now finds itself caught in a storm of economic and political chaos that threatens to undo years of progress. In 2025, the country is grappling with its worst financial crisis in decades, a crisis fueled by record-breaking inflation, a rapidly devaluing currency, and growing political unrest. For millions of families, daily survival has become a struggle. The cost of living has skyrocketed. Basic necessities like rice, cooking oil, and fuel have more than doubled in price, placing immense pressure on working-class households. What was once affordable is now beyond reach, and hunger is quietly spreading through rural and urban areas alike. The economic distress doesn't stop there. Bangladesh is drowning in debt, owing billions to international lenders. Its foreign reserves are nearly depleted, and without urgent financial assistance, a total economic collapse could be just around the corner. Layered on top of this is a troubling rise in political instability. Protests are erupting across the country, sometimes turning violent as opposition groups clash with government forces. The atmosphere is tense, and whispers of another military intervention are growing louder by the day. Even though the garment industry continues to generate income, it may not be enough to stabilize the broader economy. This crisis serves as a stark reminder of how quickly a nation can unravel when leadership falters and when the balance between growth and governance is lost. For those watching from afar, this is not just a warning about Bangladesh. It's a call to all of us to pay attention to how fragile progress can be. In our own lives, we should take this as a lesson to build not just for growth, but for resilience. Whether it's in our communities or our personal finances, the ability to adapt, stay grounded, and prepare for uncertainty is more important than ever. When instability strikes, it often affects those with the least first. So, as we watch Bangladesh's challenges unfold, we're reminded of the importance of compassion, awareness, and the need to support one another before crisis forces our hand. Number 5. Afghanistan. Afghanistan has faced decades of hardship, but now, in the year 2025, the situation has spiraled into a full-scale humanitarian catastrophe. Since the Taliban took control in 2021, the nation has been cut off from most international aid, which once made up nearly 75% of its economy. With that lifeline gone, more than 90% of Afghans now live in extreme poverty, struggling to find enough food, clean water, or even basic medical care. The country's financial system has all but collapsed under international sanctions, with inflation skyrocketing and banks unable to meet the simplest needs of the people. Can you imagine trying to survive when even bread and rice cost more than a week's income? This desperation has opened the door to dark alternatives. Black market trade is thriving, child labor has increased, and even organ trafficking is on the rise. Violence, too, continues to plague the land. Armed groups like ISIS-K are taking advantage of the chaos, launching deadly attacks and challenging Taliban control, pushing the country further into instability. At the same time, public executions and harsh repressive laws have led to fear and mass migration as countless Afghans risk everything to flee. There is no formal economy left, no consistent trade, and starvation is widespread. Experts warn that without urgent foreign aid or a shift in governance, Afghanistan may descend even deeper into anarchy. But here's a deeper question to consider. What happens to a society when both its people and its hope begin to vanish? From this tragic situation, we are reminded of the importance of compassion and collective responsibility. It's not just about one nation falling apart. It's about millions of lives calling out for help. The lesson is this: when a country is isolated, when fear replaces freedom, and when suffering is ignored, the result is not just economic collapse, it's human collapse. Let this be a reminder to always support peace, justice, and the dignity of all people, no matter where they are. Number 6. Laos. Let's take a moment to look beyond the headlines and explore what's really happening in Laos. A beautiful country with rich traditions, stunning landscapes, and warm-hearted people. But right now, Laos is facing an economic storm that's getting harder to ignore. Have you ever wondered what happens when a country borrows more than it can afford to pay back? That's the situation Laos finds itself in today. Once a growing tourism gem in Southeast Asia, Laos is now burdened by overwhelming debt, particularly to China. More than $4 billion, much of it tied to massive infrastructure projects like the high-speed railway connecting the two countries. While such developments were meant to modernize and uplift the country, They've instead become heavy chains dragging down the economy. With limited income sources and a weak economic base, Laos is struggling to make payments, and the pressure is mounting. At the same time, inflation is hitting families hard. Food, fuel, and even basic necessities are becoming unaffordable, rising by over 35% in just 1 year. Imagine your currency losing half its value in less than 2 years. How would that affect your daily life? That's the reality for many Laotians as the kip continues to fall in value. Jobs are scarce, salaries haven't kept up, and more people are slipping below the poverty line. The once thriving tourism industry, a lifeline for many local businesses, hasn't recovered from the impact of the pandemic. Without a steady flow of visitors or new industries to fill the gap, there's very little left to keep the economic engine running. Do you think a country can survive on borrowed time when there's no solid plan for recovery? Experts are sounding the alarm. If urgent action isn't taken, either through international financial support, restructuring debt, or internal reforms, Laos could face a full-blown economic meltdown. But what does that really mean for the people? It means rising hardship, more dependence on foreign aid, and an uncertain future that hangs in the balance. So, as we talk about countries falling apart, let's not just see the numbers or headlines. Let's think about the real lives affected, the quiet struggles of everyday people, and ask ourselves, what can be done to bring lasting stability to a nation on the edge? Still watching? That means you're serious about protecting yourself and your loved ones from growing risks in these countries. Type "Stay safe" in the comments to show you're tuned in and prepared. There's more critical info coming. Don't miss what could be the most important part of this video. Number 7. North Korea. North Korea has long stood as one of the most secretive and isolated nations in the world. But as we step further into 2025, signs of deep instability are becoming harder to ignore. The nation is now facing one of its most severe humanitarian crises in decades, marked by extreme poverty, deepening food shortages, and a stagnant economy suffocating under international sanctions. The most alarming issue is the widespread hunger. Recent United Nations assessments reveal that over 40% of the population is malnourished. And this isn't just a statistic, it reflects real human suffering on a massive scale. The memories of the 1990s famine are resurfacing, not in history books, but in the daily lives of millions who cannot access basic nourishment. With the country's borders tightly sealed, foreign aid rarely reaches those in need, leaving people to depend on underground markets just to survive. Yet even these informal channels are not enough. The government continues to funnel resources into its military and nuclear ambitions, while everyday citizens are left to fight for scraps. Internally, the foundation of the regime appears increasingly unstable. There are growing reports of military purges, political infighting, and rising discontent among the elite. These fractures hint that even the strongest grip on power may begin to weaken from within. In modern life, it's easy to forget the struggles faced by those behind closed borders. But North Korea's situation reminds us that unchecked power, when combined with neglect of basic human needs, can lead to unimaginable suffering. For those of us fortunate to live in freer societies, this is a call to be more aware, more compassionate, and to never take peace or prosperity for granted. As we navigate our own lives, let us remember the well-being of people, not power or pride, is what truly sustains a nation. Number 8. Myanmar. Let's take a closer look at Myanmar, a country rich in history and culture, but right now facing one of its darkest times. Since the military coup in 2021, Myanmar has been caught in a spiral of chaos, and sadly, things continue to deteriorate. The streets echo with the unrest of a country at war with itself. Civil conflict has broken out across the nation as resistance forces push back against the ruling military regime. What used to be stable is now uncertain. The economy, once showing promise, is collapsing rapidly. Western sanctions, the exit of major foreign companies, and the rapid devaluation of the local currency have pushed the nation into economic freefall. Can you imagine waking up to find basic food prices triple overnight while your paycheck stays the same? Or worse, disappears altogether. People are struggling to survive. Inflation is out of control. For many families, even simple meals are becoming luxuries. International agencies are raising the alarm. Millions face hunger, and some areas may soon reach famine-like conditions. Banks are unstable, black markets are taking over, and faith in leadership is fading. Meanwhile, rebel groups continue to gain territory, pushing back against the military. But this only deepens the crisis. Instead of unity, the country is fragmenting. Experts say a complete collapse isn't just possible, it's becoming more likely with each passing month. The government is losing its grip, and Myanmar, without a clear path to peace, teeters on the brink of anarchy. So what can we learn from this? What happens when power is used without compassion, when those in charge lead by fear instead of wisdom? For us, watching from afar, this isn't just a story of one nation's fall. It's a reminder of how precious peace truly is, and how easily it can be lost. Ask yourself, in your own life, your own community, how do you contribute to stability, to kindness, to justice? Because real change always begins with the small choices we make every day. Let Myanmar's pain be a wake-up call. When a country forgets to care for its people, it loses more than power. It loses its soul. Number 9. Pakistan. Let's talk honestly for a moment. Have you ever wondered what happens when a nation's problems stack so high it feels like the whole system might come crashing down? That's the reality Pakistan is facing right now. Picture this: a country caught in a whirlwind of economic collapse, political chaos, and growing insecurity, where everyday people are struggling just to keep food on the table. Inflation is out of control. The Pakistani rupee has dropped to its lowest point ever, and the country owes a staggering $125 billion in foreign debt. Can you imagine how hard it is to survive when your paycheck doesn't stretch far enough to cover even basic essentials like food or fuel? And speaking of fuel, shortages have made things worse. When there's no fuel, transport slows, trade suffers, and even electricity becomes unreliable. At the same time, political unrest is boiling over. Years of corruption, unstable leadership, and interference from powerful military figures have left the government barely hanging on. Violent protests and public mistrust only add more fuel to the fire. And as if that's not enough, terrorist groups continue to operate within the region, adding a constant layer of fear and instability. What would you do if even your power and water weren't guaranteed every day? That's what millions of Pakistanis are dealing with, facing water shortages, regular blackouts, and crumbling public services. Over 40% of the population now lives in poverty, and hope feels like a luxury many can't afford. Yes, the country has received support from the International Monetary Fund, but let's ask the real question. Are these loans actually solving the root problems or just delaying the inevitable? This isn't about panic or drama, it's about taking a closer look at a country in real crisis. So, what needs to change for Pakistan to turn the tide? And is there still a path forward before it's too late? You've made it this far for a reason, because you sense something's not right. Drop a wake-up call in the comments if you're ready to face the truth and take control of your future. Keep watching. What's coming next could impact your decisions in ways you didn't expect. Number 10. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, a nation once celebrated for its natural beauty and cultural richness, is now gripped by a deepening crisis that touches nearly every aspect of daily life. Since defaulting on its massive $83 billion debt in 2022, the country has struggled to regain its footing, with inflation climbing to painful levels, fuel shortages leaving citizens stranded, and basic essentials becoming harder to find. More than a quarter of the population now lives below the poverty line, and many families are forced to choose between food and medicine, highlighting the heartbreaking human cost behind the economic statistics. While government officials scramble for international bailouts and debt restructuring plans, these measures have yet to bring meaningful change on the ground. The once thriving tourism industry has nearly collapsed, and with foreign investors backing away, the country is losing the very lifelines that could revive its economy. Businesses are shuttering, jobs are disappearing, and hope is becoming scarce. What's more, political corruption and mismanagement continue to erode public trust, sparking widespread protests and sometimes violent confrontations with law enforcement. The atmosphere is tense, uncertain, and fragile, conditions that make everyday life feel like a balancing act between survival and despair. In moments like these, it's crucial for us to reflect not just on Sri Lanka's plight, but on how easily any system, no matter how strong it may seem, can falter without mindfulness, responsible leadership, and collective care. For those watching from afar, let this be a reminder that stability is not something we inherit. It's something we must continuously nurture. If you're planning to visit, invest, or even support Sri Lanka, do so with eyes wide open and hearts aware of the complexities. And in our own lives, may we cultivate compassion not only for others, but also for the structures we depend on, because when one part of the world falls apart, it echoes in us all. Is your country collapsing? Here's what the wise do to survive. In a world that seems to change overnight, many of us find ourselves asking the difficult questions. What happens if the place we call home no longer feels safe, stable, or sustainable? Around Asia and beyond, some countries are experiencing profound political and economic instability, like a tree whose roots have been slowly rotting beneath the surface. If you're living in one of these nations, or even simply concerned about the global ripple effects, there are steps you can take, not out of fear, but out of mindful preparation. As the Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment, and in the present moment, it is wise to be aware, to observe carefully, and to act, not with panic, but with clarity." The first and most important tip is to stay informed. Not just through mainstream headlines, but by paying attention to the deeper currents beneath them. Understand the political climate, track economic indicators, follow international reports, and listen to the voices of the people on the ground. Pay attention to the policies being implemented by local governments, especially those affecting your daily life. Restrictions, censorship, inflation, currency controls, or sudden changes in leadership. These are often the subtle signs of instability that precede larger collapses. Awareness is the seed of wisdom. As Confucius said, "To be wrong is nothing, unless you remember it afterward." In today's world, to ignore reality is a luxury we can no longer afford. Flowing from this awareness, the next step is to observe the financial landscape of your country and make decisions not based on hope, but on foresight. Markets are more than numbers. They're emotional barometers, reflecting the fear or confidence of a population. Is your local currency devaluing? Are foreign investors pulling out? Are prices of basic goods rising too quickly? Just as a skilled farmer knows when to plant and when to harvest, a mindful individual learns when to hold and when to let go. Financial awareness is not just for the wealthy. It's essential for anyone who wants to live with dignity and peace, regardless of their bank balance. The wise man shapes himself to circumstances, as water shapes itself to the vessel that contains it, said a Buddhist proverb. And in times of economic turbulence, flexibility can mean survival. But awareness alone is not enough. If you sense that the tides are turning against stability, it is not unwise to have an exit strategy, not because you are running away, but because you are protecting your future and the well-being of your family. Make sure your travel documents are updated and valid. Set aside emergency funds, ideally in stable currencies or international banks. Research and even visit potential safe haven countries before any emergency arises. Don't wait for the storm to build before building your shelter. A Zen teaching reminds us, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is now. Prepare while there's still calm, because when chaos strikes, the window for action narrows drastically. That leads to another practical but deeply strategic approach. Diversify your finances. In countries where the economy may collapse quickly, having all your savings in one local bank or even in one currency can be a recipe for disaster. Many who lived through economic collapses in places like Venezuela or Lebanon will tell you how quickly the value of money can evaporate. By keeping part of your assets in stable foreign currencies, international accounts, or even in tangible assets like gold, you're not just saving money, you're preserving options. In Buddhism, there's an understanding of anicca, impermanence. Everything changes. Knowing this, the wise do not cling to one thing, but learn to adapt to many. Think of your financial situation not as a fortress, but as a flowing river, one that must sometimes be redirected to keep its life-giving power. And finally, while strategy and money matter, never overlook the simple yet profound importance of being physically prepared. In times of disruption, basic needs become rare luxuries. Ensure you have emergency supplies, food that doesn't spoil, clean water, necessary medications, first aid kits, and tools for power or communication if systems go down. Not in excess, not in panic, but with care, like a mother preparing for winter. Just as the Buddha taught monks to rely on 4 basic requisites, food, clothing, shelter, and medicine, we too must learn to cover our essentials. He who is best prepared can endure the most, said Seneca, a Stoic whose wisdom often mirrors the calm discipline found in Eastern thought. And indeed, those who remain calm and capable amidst crisis often become pillars of strength for others. Through all of this, it's important not to let the mind be consumed by fear or despair. Yes, some Asian countries, and indeed parts of the world, may be facing internal decay, crumbling under the weight of corruption, mismanagement, or external pressures. But that doesn't mean we lose hope or forget our humanity. The challenge is not just to escape, but to grow wiser, more compassionate, more attuned to suffering and the impermanence of all things. Your role in this unfolding story isn't just to survive, but to become someone who moves through difficulty with grace. As Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "When another person makes you suffer, it is because he suffers deeply within himself, and his suffering is spilling over. He does not need punishment, he needs help." This applies not just to individuals but to nations. Their collapse is often a cry for help, for healing, for justice, for renewal. So if you're watching the news with worry or sensing the slow unraveling of the system around you, don't just scroll and sigh. Act, prepare, and cultivate inner stillness. Preparation is not paranoia, it is love in action. For your future self, for your loved ones, and for the community that may one day depend on your stability. And when you feel overwhelmed, come back to the breath. Come back to the center, because no matter what is collapsing outside, peace begins within, and from that peace, all wise actions flow. As we've seen today, when nations begin to fall apart, it's not just about politics or economics. It's about real people, real lives, and the urgent need for awareness and action. In times like these, wisdom is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So, take what you've learned today and ask yourself, how can I prepare wisely, live mindfully, and support others with compassion in an uncertain world? Thank you for watching The Journey of Wisdom. If this video gave you insight or clarity, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos on how to live with awareness, resilience, and peace, no matter what the world looks like. Until next time, stay grounded, stay prepared, and stay kind.